He's Jim Stewart. I'm Rick Collins, and this is Off the Bench. Today we're going to be talking about the Mavs weekend. Good one, actually, this time, surprisingly. Trading places, OU beats Kansas. We're also going to talk a lot of NFL football. Tonight we have Monday Night Football. We have a whole weekend to discuss, and a very disappointing Cowboys loss. Let's start there.
I can't say we didn't predict this.
No.
Everybody, we're not going to name any names.
We even had people in the room.
Sean and Edgar, that thought that the game was going to be either close or they were going to win. We knew better.
Yeah. We said, well, I mean, it's possible, but when we looked at it all, we were like, no. There's nothing that said that the Cowboys had a chance in this game. And the Eagles came out and did, at least in the second half, what we thought the Eagles would do to this Cowboys team.
My saying has been for the whole year is I believe Dak is a good quarterback. I don't think he's a franchise quarterback. I think he's a good quarterback. And what happened was he came out of nowhere with the Cowboys out of the fourth round. No one thought anything of him, and they got attached. They got attached. They thought, oh, it's the next Tony Romo, some guy no one knew about, and he shows some promise.
Well, it helped to have all the weapons around him that he had.
And the best offensive line in football. Right now, you obviously watched the game. He threw 3 picks, one of them in the end zone, which should have been a touchdown. The issue we have is that everybody's giving him excuses that, oh, he doesn't have Zeke, oh, he doesn't have Tyron Smith, oh, he doesn't have, Dez isn't what he used to be. The issue is a lot of quarterbacks, most quarterbacks in this league, do not have an offensive line that are about as good as the Cowboys. Cowboys' offensive line right now is about average. And we're not acting like this went from the top offensive line to the worst offensive line because they lost Tyron Smith. They didn't. They're an average offensive line. That offensive line is probably as good as Carson Wentz's offensive line. The thing that Carson Wentz does is he is able to make adjustments. He's able to know exactly what he wants to do, instantaneously make decisions.
I'd still have to disagree. I think the Philadelphia Eagles offensive line right now is one, it's healthy.
No, it's not. Peters is no longer.
Peters is starting.
No, Peters.
Yes,
he was out. He was out earlier in the year, and
But he was starting yesterday.
Okay, he started last night, but for this whole year, from week 1 or week 2, Peters was out.
He's been out 4 or 5. He was out 4 or 5 weeks.
And they still
won.
So what I'm trying to say is Dak,
he needs all those pieces around him.
Yes, he cannot carry a team by himself.
No.
Let's put it that way. He is a game manager. He is a Trent Dilfer. He is a Brad Johnson. He is someone with the right pieces around him can be very successful. He's not a Tom Brady. He's not an Aaron Rodgers. He's not a Carson Wentz. He's not a Brett Favre or even he's a Jared Goff. A Jared Goff, someone who is very skilled, and if he has a good line, a good running back, and good wide receivers.
I don't know. I think Jared Goff has shown that he's actually better than Dak Prescott is. But I think Dak Prescott made a lot of errors in judgment that normally he would never have to make. And that's part of the learning curve that we talked about going into this weekend was he needed to have some games like this to go through that learning curve of what happens when everything breaks down and what plays do I need to make, and yes, I made a bad decision. Okay, how do I recover from that then in the following week? And we hope that going into this game, maybe he had learned from the past week. This is his lowest point in his career so far. Luckily, it's early on, and he's got plenty of time to improve, and he's got guys that are going to end up coming back healthy. Probably not until next year, fully healthy. Tyron Smith is dealing with, I know he's got a groin injury, but I'm more concerned about his back. I think long-term that's a bigger issue. But if he goes and has surgery on his back, he should come back healthy next year. You got Zeke back next year. You've got,
probably a new weapon at wide receiver.
A new weapon at wide receiver, hopefully, and maybe another offensive line player to fill in at one of those holes where they're really, really struggling right now. They've got to get depth on this offensive line because you see what happens when their star offensive line players are out is that they have nobody behind them.
Nope.
They've invested entirely in the starters, and once the starters get an injury, we've got guys who probably wouldn't make any other club.
I think you nailed it on the head. You nailed the issue on the head, which is Dak shouldn't or wouldn't have to deal with this problem normally, which is taking the whole offense on his back.
But you see what Russell Wilson does when he has injuries on the offensive line. You see what Carson Wentz has been doing.
And he doesn't do that.
This year when he's had injuries on the offensive line. they still make good decisions. They still make great plays. They still are able to, win games. I mean, it comes down to that split second of making that decision of throwing that pass to Dez or throwing it underneath to Jason Wynn.
Or being able to sense
Alfred
that
Morris.
off defensive lineman coming to be able to evade him.
And
throw
right
down the
now,
field.
he doesn't have that. And
Well,
I think part of it is he's never had to deal with it. And Carson Wentz has probably had to deal with that quite a bit more than Dak has.
I'll be honest. I think Dak is probably in the best situation he can be in when it comes to how badly he's playing right now. Because even if you watch the broadcast, the announcers, ESPN, all the experts, they all still say he's a franchise quarterback.
And there's nobody behind him who's going to take his job.
But that's not the point they're trying to make. They still consider him a franchise quarterback, which means because he did so well in the first year, even though it could have been maybe 40% of him.
Yeah.
Because of Zeke having that year, the offensive line, all that. They still consider him a franchise quarterback, so they see this as a stumble, not a...
I think you still see the quarterback that the Cowboys really want to have. And let's look real quick at the game. The Cowboys led this game 9-7 at halftime. And part of that was the Dallas defense came out and played amazing. A really surprising game this Dallas Cowboys defense brought out for the first half. The problem was at halftime, the Eagles made the adjustments. The Cowboys didn't make the adjustments, and the Eagles came out and scored 30 straight on the Cowboys.
That has been the issue the entire season is Jason Garrett doesn't seem to be able to make those adjustments. We've talked about it most of the year. Dez needs to move. They need to move him, before the snap. They need to get him on the run.
Terrence Williams needs to catch with his dang hands instead of trying to catch with his body every time.
And Dak they need to move him. But the problem, the more I watched the game last night, and they showed at the end, and we're going to wrap this up because we have a hard break. But the more I watched last night, the more I realized there's a reason why they don't move him they don't bootleg him. He's not accurate on the run. He is not. He had 2 or 3 opportunities to throw the ball down the field. One of them was an interception in the end zone when he bootlegged. He's not Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers seems to be more accurate when he's on the run. So he's a pocket passer. Then he needs to learn more of the Russell Wilson, maybe even Baker Mayfield style of moving around in the pocket, or go as simple as Tom Brady. Drop back when the rush comes in, step up into the pocket.
I was going to say it's not as much of needing to move around in the pocket. It's where to move into the pocket, knowing when to step up, when to step out to the right, when to step out to the left. Because there were multiple times where he stepped out of the pocket
into a
tackler. And I think it's going to be a learning curve for him, especially the rest of the season. I think this sets up well for the Cowboys next season. Obviously, I don't think the Cowboys make the playoffs this season. It's going to be tough to do it without Tyron Smith, without Sean
Lee. They're 50% now.
Anthony Hitchens is injured last night.
They're on par for a Cowboy season the last 10 years, which is 50%. And when we get back, we'll be talking a little bit more NFL. And was it a good weekend or was it subpar? You'll find out next.
We're so excited to invite you to our Stacy Furniture Anniversary Sale.
Save today on Stacy's outstanding selection, up to 50% off select items throughout the store.
Now's the time to buy that new bedroom, living room, or dining room suit. You can't beat these prices anywhere.
Name brands like Bernhard, Hooker, Universal, and Sherrill, all on sale today.
It's Stacy's Anniversary Sale only happens once a year.
Shop Stacy's today or visit us online at stacyfurniture.com.
Remember, when you're shopping at Stacy's, you're shopping with family.
So around the NFL, the Patriots hammered the Oakland Raiders in Mexico at the Azteca. Who would have
thought that there were so many Patriots fans in Mexico? Unless it's all the the winter birds, all the people from the Northeast probably go down to Mexico.
They're flying south.
Well, they've got houses down there.
Well, if they had played the game in Cabo, I could have understood, or Cancun or something. But in Mexico City and you saw what happened with the players, and it was, you're 2,000 feet higher than you are a mile high, and it clearly took a toll on the players. You saw a lot of players end up having to go to the locker room because of dehydration. I assume, some altitude sickness as well. So certainly health concerns when you talk about potentially moving a team to Mexico full time. Mexico City maybe isn't the place you would move a team to, and it's pretty far away. If you look at it on a map,
Cabo,
you're not
perfect place.
Cabo or Cancun would be at least a little bit more fun.
Yeah.
But if you really are going to think about moving a team to Mexico, which I think the NFL will consider,
I mean, it isn't that far. It's like having a team in Canada.
Yeah.
The NBA has had 2 teams in Canada until the was it the Grizzlies that moved down to Memphis?
Yeah, the Grizzlies moved to Memphis.
Yes. Before that, it was the Vancouver Grizzlies,
Toronto Raptors.
and Toronto Raptors. So
Raptors are still there, but remember, Toronto is like right on the other side of the border.
Mexico City's
from
not
New
that
York
far. It's an hour off the
State,
border
so.
when it comes to flying. So
Right.
so it's another hour of flight if you're from the East Coast.
It's not right across the borders. Mexico City is a little bit harder to get to than probably most of the Canadian
Toronto.
cities that we've played.
Well, they're both
definitely
right on the
Toronto.
border, right?
But I think it's interesting to think about having a team in Mexico.
Well, you want to know why? Is because the NFL has done such an unbelievable job building that fan base.
Yes.
That fan base is as ravenous for NFL as people in the bordering states along the Mexico border. The South is a very heavy football loving region of the country, and that extends down into Mexico. Maybe not down into South America, but at least Central America is as football centric as at least North America. And it's crazy.
You look at what happens in London with some of these games, and I don't think you have quite the same turnout.
It's the distance.
And I think the distance is the biggest killer. I think Mexico makes the most sense. Let's look at some of the other games. The Bills lost for the 3rd straight week in a row. Tyrod Taylor got benched at the beginning of the game.
Didn't go too well.
Did not go too well. So Peterman did make 6 completions.
But 5 of them were the other team.
Unfortunately, 5 to the other team. So,
do you think Tyrod Taylor walked into the facility today like Conor McGregor?
He's going to be the starter going forward. It was a stupid experiment. And I think the Bills'
But the Bills have been known to do this.
I think the Bills' entire coaching staff is gone before the end of the year. This is
For this
nightmare
mistake?
because you start off so well. They were 5-2 going into week 8. And then all of a sudden you've lost 3 in a row now. You had a shot at the playoffs. You're now out.
Along those lines, would you fire everybody in Kansas City?
I think Kansas City's a little bit different. I think
same record.
They've got their own issues, but Buffalo did this to themselves.
Yes. Okay.
And the whole Tyrod Taylor experiment just shows me how just the incompetence that is going on in Buffalo.
But this hasn't been the first time this has happened in Buffalo. Remember, in the early 2000s, Doug Flutie. When
EJ Manuel was benched, even when he was playing well, they have not been able to find a quarterback.
Remember, Flutie got him in the playoffs, and then they benched him for Peterson to go into the playoffs, then lost, and then everybody goes, we shouldn't have benched Doug Flutie. It seems like the outside of Jim, the Buffalo, the 4-time
Reeves. Mora. Kelly.
Yes, Jim Kelly.
That one. I got the Jim right.
Oh my gosh,
Stewart.
brain farts.
Oh no.
Since Jim Kelly, it seems like that organization
not been able
has
to find a
fallen
quarterback.
apart.
They haven't been able to find a quarterback. That's it. I mean, if you look at the history,
not that. It's the coaching staff, the GM. They can't find a quarterback.
Yes.
They're always up in the top part of the draft. They just don't ever draft the right quarterback. I mean, would you not be happy if they drafted a Baker Mayfield or a Rosen or someone along those lines?
I think if the player that I would think that they would draft if he drops is probably Rosen, but I'm not convinced he's going to be a savior of that team. I think he'll help. They still need weapons. They keep getting massive injuries with a lot of their draft picks, their top draft picks. I don't know if it's bad scouting or what's going on, but the Buffalo Bills organization, the problem that they have is they're not as bad as the Browns, and so
no one looks at it.
No one looks at it
because the Browns are.
But they haven't been good since the early 90s.
And then you look down further south, and Tampa Bay won its 2nd game in a row behind Ryan Fitzpatrick.
He just wins games. The guy is the best backup quarterback in the history of the league. It's
Maybe
incredible.
Josh McCown is right there with them, but those two,
it's unbelievable.
They're almost starters. That's why you want your backup.
But if you make him a starter, you will not win. But if you keep him as a backup, and he's able to come in, he'll win games as a backup. He just can't win as a starter. You can't name him as a starter at the beginning of the season.
So what you do is you get a starter and you bring him in like one
the
play.
second half.
The second drive of the game. Sorry, Fitzpatrick. Sorry, you are not the starter, but we will bring you in every game.
Every game of the second drive. I don't know, whatever it takes, because Tampa Bay needed these wins. They are out really of the playoff race, but they still got a lot of talent on the team. They've got to get on a huge winning streak if they have a chance of the playoffs. I don't really think they're out. This is a team that's on a rebuild. Jameis Winston being injured is tough, though.
Well, talking about out of the playoffs and done for the season, I think the Broncos are
done. It's unbelievable what's happened since week 3, week 4 of the season until now.
Does this hurt? I'm not talking about the team. Does this hurt John Elway's legacy? That he comes in and he did all that great stuff, but was it Peyton Manning?
He has not found a quarterback yet.
He had you fooled.
Yeah,
you thought he was. He's so good at fighting quarterbacks.
It was before Elway came in that they were
Osweiler,
quarterbacks.
Paxton Lynch, those guys were brought in by John Elway.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Before John Elway, they were great at bringing in quarterbacks.
So that's why
guys that were not big names and making them into great quarterbacks. Since John Elway has come in, they haven't been good at getting quarterbacks. I don't know what it is.
Is he an example of good player, bad GM?
I'm going to give him a couple more years, but it hasn't started off real well, especially offensively. And what he's done well is bringing in free agents.
Yeah.
Defensive free agents especially, and they've played real well.
So let's just break down, because we have to go to a hard break again. Minnesota Vikings destroy the Rams. The Jags and Lions both won.
Yes.
So all in all, I think this is an average NFL weekend.
Also, I think what we saw is that the teams that we think are going to make the playoffs, they just keep winning.
It's a crapshoot. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and the AFC is just insane. I mean, there's like 8 teams at 5-5. And I think we're not going to know until the last 2 weeks of the season who's going to make the playoffs in the
So
AFC.
next we go into college football and then dive into a little bit of Mavs. Next.
They'll test you. Try to break your will. But however loud the loudness gets, however many cheese puffs may fly, you're the driver, the one in control. Stand firm. Just wait. And move only when you hear the click that says they're buckled in for the drive. Never give up till they buckle up.
Seattle is as tough a team as you can face when it comes to playing at home.
Yeah.
They've got the 12th man. They've got the Legion of Boom.
Ooh, be careful about 12th man, because A&M, I think, then they sued.
Yeah, but I think it got resolved.
Okay.
But what has ended up happening is the Legion of Boom is now, I think, more of a cap gun, more of a pop. The Legion of Pop.
The Legion of Pop, yeah.
Because Cam Chancellor seems to be out for the season. Richard Sherman's out for the season. That's most of their defensive back power outside of Earl Thomas and Wagner. Most of that defensive back and defensive squad are gone.
Yeah, they're going to really struggle defensively, especially against Julio Jones this weekend, or tonight, sorry. I think Atlanta has to take advantage.
Oh, by the way,
down the field.
This is NFL, Monday night, not college.
Yeah, we're not quite to college. We'll be there next. It's just so much football. But they have to take advantage down the field with Julio Jones and with Sanu. If they don't take advantage down the field against this Seattle team, this is a Falcons team that is not going to make the playoffs.
No, it's not.
This is a game that they should win.
I'm sorry. I don't think the Falcons are going to make the playoffs, and I don't think they should make the playoffs. I don't think they deserve to make the playoffs. They have been so bad this year, coming off of a Super Bowl. Well, let's call it a choke, because they did. You know, it was 28-3, and the Patriots came back and won.
I think we had such high expectations for this Falcons team based on what they did last year. Yeah,
was crazy.
And there are no changes to the team. It's basically the exact same team.
But what it is people learn. They spent an all offseason learning about how that team did what they did, and they shut it down.
And they figured out how to get pressure on Matt Ryan. And Matt Ryan is not a guy who can get out of the pocket and make a lot of plays with his feet. He's certainly not Carson Wentz, but he can still make plays in the pocket. But their teams are getting just enough pressure on him to make those throws to Jones and Sanu a little bit more challenging.
And speaking of just enough, the Seattle Seahawks, with the loss the LA Rams had this last weekend against the Minnesota Vikings, just have their foot in the door when it comes to the NFC West. They have just enough to maybe make the playoffs because of the schedule and because the LA Rams might be slipping a little bit.
Yeah, and the Rams obviously went up against a really, really good Minnesota Vikings defense, and man, that Vikings defense.
It feels like the old Vikings defense.
The Vikings remind me of the old Baltimore Ravens, where you would have a St. Louis Rams team, come in that scores 30, 40 points a game, and they just shut them down. Really impressive win for the Vikings, but it just showed that the Rams do have weaknesses. They're not a perfect team. They haven't been perfect this season. But the Rams were on a roll, the Vikings
from a first-year coach, a second-year quarterback, a second-year running back, or a third-year running back?
Third-year running back now.
And a whole bunch of pieces they threw together this offseason.
I think that you're going to see that the Rams are going to falter a little bit coming down the stretch. And this is where the Seattle Seahawks can take advantage. And if they beat Atlanta, they pretty much lock up a wild card spot because Atlanta falling is really going to hurt NFC chances of getting any of these teams that are around 500 into the playoffs. There are too many teams right now that are like 7-3, 8-2 in the NFC.
Those aren't the
like
Packers.
The Cowboys being another 5-5 team. But the Falcons falling to 5-5 and the Seahawks going to 7-3 pretty much guarantees them at least a wild card spot, and it shows that they are one of the best of the medium teams in this league, plus the fact that it would then put them in a tie with the Rams for the first spot in the NFC West.
Riddle me this.
Batman.
Riddle me this. Would you not say that the Rams seem to be the complete opposite of the Cowboys right now? A young team that's up and coming that seems to have a bright future. Where the Cowboys feel like they're going the opposite direction.
The Rams are showing that they know what they want to do.
They can make adjustments. They have a good defense. They have a quarterback, running back, wide receiver. I think it really helps that their defense has been phenomenal this year. Obviously, Vikings showed that the defense still has weaknesses too. But I think going forward, this Vikings team, the only concern about them is Case Keenum. If he keeps doing what he's doing, they're a Super Bowl team. Yeah.
But the question is, their quarterback, Case Keenum, and he's a huge. If you have your biggest question mark at quarterback, that's a concern going into the playoffs.
Yeah, but we have seen in the past
how to get to quarterback.
We have seen in the past that if you have a stifling defense, a good run game, and you have a manager of the game at quarterback, you can win.
As long as he doesn't make mistakes.
Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Yeah. These teams that exactly. If your quarterback cannot win the game for you, he can't make mistakes.
Correct.
And Case Keenum this year has made a few mistakes, but he has been fairly clean when it comes to making bad decisions.
But in this game, I think the Falcons need to run the ball. They need to throw the ball down the field. They've got to make big plays down the field. Seattle needs to run the ball. They got Eddie Lacy back healthy.
But what does that mean? Eddie Lacy's been a bust.
Yeah, but he's been a decent running back for them this year. Rawls has really kind of disappeared on their bench. I think Seattle needs to run the ball because Russell Wilson's going to be running for his life back there.
Yep.
Dwayne Brown is not healthy, and he was brought in because they were desperate. They've got problems on their offensive line.
College football next?
College football next.
Next.
Maybe you can make retirement happen. After all, you made her college years happen. Opening that education savings account when she was little. Spearheading a campus tour. And another, and another, and another, and another. Bam! Deciphering financial aid. She was like, what? And now she's like, yeah! You aced planning for college. Now get the tips you need to get on track at aceyourretirement.org.
Oklahoma, Kansas, Jayhawks, it was, I think, an eye-opening game, not just for the score, not just for Baker Mayfield and his Heisman. They could etch his name in the Heisman Trophy right now. He's won it. I'm more concerned with, Baker Mayfield has propelled himself into the top 3, possibly even. There are some talks about him being the top pick in the draft. I hope not. That means he's going to the Browns or some horrible team like that. But the problem is that he needs to now be able to rein in those emotions that gives him all that power. He has the biggest chip on his shoulder. He plays with a chip on his shoulder. He gets in defenders' faces. He yells at them. People disrespect him. It fuels him. But he needs to be able to turn that off the second he passes that white line back onto the sidelines or outside into the real world, because what has happened is during the Kansas game, cameras caught him making
obscene gestures.
Yes. Now, let's be fair. I'm not giving him an excuse. Let's be fair. They disrespected him the whole game. They gave
Did
late.
he have an itch?
No, but he had late hits on him. You saw that late hit. They had late hits. They played dirty. They got in his face, and his temper got him. You know, he basically scored a touchdown, came off the field, and said, "What now? What now?" In a lot more crude of fashion, but he's saying, "What now?" He needs to. All that energy is amazing for team chemistry, right? Would you not want to play with a guy who's ready to go to war with you? That's what you want, a guy to lead you. But the thing is that he needs to be Baker Mayfield on the field, and he needs to be Tom Brady off the field. Have a little bit more of that fire, yes, but be strategic with it. He needs to be able to hold himself back, sit there and go, they're doing this because I'm killing them. He's got to just hold that back.
Well, do you have to be married to Gisele Bündchen for that to occur?
I don't think Baker would complain about that. But there's no excuse anymore. People need to know there's been too many examples of guys getting caught doing stuff on the field. There's cameras everywhere.
Yes.
And not just in the stadium when it comes to the broadcast, but people have their phones. He needs to be smarter than that. And the question ended up going in, and I don't think it's going to hurt him too much because he can mature. But can he control his emotions? That's the question coming out of the Kansas game. He's an amazing on-the-field person. He's going to go down being probably one of the best quarterbacks to ever play college football. Honestly, they're talking about that now. He's the only quarterback in college football history to rush for 1,000 yards and to have over 14,000 yards passing. He is tied. He's in the top 3 of passing touchdowns in the history of the college game. He's going to go down as a legend. But the problem is, if he is going to take that legendary status from college and try to implement that into the NFL, he needs to be able to hold back. He needs to be able to be, that more mature player off the field. Because right now he's at a college, which he's the quarterback of the college, the big man on campus, whatever you want to say. When he goes to the next level, he is the leader of a multi-billion-dollar company.
Well, I'm going to actually sort of have to disagree with you on this one. I like what I saw out of Mayfield on Saturday. And if I'm an NFL scout, I'm not really concerned with the gestures and that sort of thing. I think as a GM or a president or owner of a NFL franchise, maybe I have some. You
mean wins are going to overlook
concerns,
the?
But I really think it's not necessarily the wins, but it's the way that he wins. And this was a game to me where Oklahoma could have had a letdown, not in terms of losing the game, but the offensive output could have been considerably lower.
Yeah, it was all second half.
It could have been, Baker Mayfield only playing half the game and Oklahoma running the ball every play. And Baker Mayfield came out and just said, "No, I'm gonna put it in their faces." And I like that he has that kind of moxie, that he just plays with a chip on his shoulder, whether or not he seems to deserve the chip on his shoulder. Because at this point, the fact that he's pretty much, he's nailed down the Heisman Trophy award. It tells me that it's not about the Heisman for him. It's not about winning for him as much as it is about destroying the other team. And that's what you want to see in a quarterback.
Who's the last player we've seen do that? And I'm not comparing him to that when it comes to his career in the NFL, but who was the last person we see that no matter how many wins he got, he always has that chip on his shoulder?
Well, I know that
Brady.
Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady are both
Aaron Rodgers was
that.
Because he got drafted
But
later
it's that attitude, and you see it in McCarthy.
Winning's not enough.
Yes, and you see the way that they play even when they're up by 30 in the NFL, is that they're going to throw a touchdown pass.
You have to take him off the field.
Shove it in the defense's face. I am your daddy, is what they're saying. And Baker
he said that to Baylor.
And Baker Mayfield has that attitude, and
no one else does it. At the quarterback position.
Nobody right now in college, as far as the top 5-6 quarterbacks, expected to go in the NFL draft next year, have that attitude like Baker Mayfield does. Now, he doesn't have the measurables like you would like to see with some of the bigger quarterbacks, and he's not as big as Tom Brady. He doesn't have quite the accuracy that Tom Brady has. But what I've seen more and more as the season goes on is that when he is struggling early in games, he finds a way to figure it out and pull it together and become more accurate. And a lot of quarterbacks, if they struggle early in a game, it continues or it goes worse and it goes downhill, it snowballs. He doesn't. And that's one of the things that as I watched that game, I said, that's an NFL quarterback. And I feel like we're trading places here because normally you're supporting him. Look at this, you're already wearing your Oklahoma red.
Don't forget, because you said he's not as accurate. Don't forget, he's setting the record, all-time record in NCAA for completion percentage. But he's at 76%.
But if you watched early in that game, he overthrew a lot of easy passes. His receivers,
but it was windy.
His receivers are always wide open, and he has one of the best tight ends and best running back receivers in college football, in my opinion. So it helps to have great players make great plays for you. But his accuracy down the field is one thing that I looked for yesterday or on Saturday, and I saw it. He was throwing the ball accurately down the field.
In a crazy...
In fact, one of those completions that ended up at the 3-yard line should have been a touchdown.
Yeah, because the wide receiver
fell down.
All right, moving on. We are going to talk a little bit of Mavs.
Yes.
And I'm not sure after that, because you wrote the schedule.
No, all we have is Mavs left, and I feel like we're going to kind of end on a high note because the Mavs actually got a win this weekend. Dallas Mavericks got a win over the Young Bucks. You like that?
It's a talented Young Bucks.
Name there. Yeah, sorry, not that great. But the Bucks were a team that I think have a lot of weaknesses. They're a young team, as I said, but they're a team that has a lot of talent, and the Mavericks still had to stop that talent from scoring if they expected to win that game Saturday night.
Yes, they might have weaknesses. Size isn't one of them.
No. And
we have a size deficiency on our team.
And I think it was very fortunate that the Bucks shot so poorly. Now, half of that is on the Mavericks defense. Wesley Matthews was, let's not say great, very good against Antetokounmpo defensively. Antetokounmpo still had 24 points and like 17 rebounds. But the fact that he only shot 7 of 20 from the field shows that defensively the Mavericks put together a game that they really need at this point because they were desperate for a win.
Oh, yeah. And one of the good stories coming out of this game is Yogi is quietly having a spectacular season. He had 16 points last night, shooting a crisp 76% from the floor.
What is he, 6 foot maybe?
5'10" maybe?
Yeah.
I think he is a real steal. They found a gem last year. The issue the Mavs are always going to have I think he's going to be the next J.J. Barea. I mean, he's here, but he's going to be that same player. He's going to come off the bench with that energy. Because J.J. is 33, 34 years old.
I think it's great, though, because what we're saying is J.J. is expendable at this point.
I don't know if he's expendable.
He had a great game last night. But I think one of the problems is the Mavericks, he is age-wise, he doesn't fit into the Mavericks' long-term plans.
No.
What the Mavericks need to start really thinking about is where are the pieces that we're going to keep? And where are the pieces that we're going to say, let's put him on the trade block? Because the Mavericks aren't going to make the playoffs this year.
No. And we need to make sure that this team is going in a different direction than it is going right now. And what I mean by is we need to get more height on this team. Our team is way too short.
Yeah, we're starting Dirk at center right now with Maxi Kleber, the other German on the team, at power forward, and then with Harrison Barnes as small forward. You would think that's a tall lineup, if you looked at just height.
That's a tall front court.
Front court. The back court's very small. But if you just looked at height-wise, you would think, wow, that's a really tall front court. That's pretty good.
But it is completely...
But then you look at how big Maxi Kleber and Dirk are and defensively what they're capable of doing. And
Kleber's not bad on defense.
No, but it does not match up to the height. The guys you would expect at that height, what they would be capable of doing.
You've got two... Kleber's way more athletic than Dirk.
Yeah.
Ever was.
But he's not a defensive stopper.
But he's not a defensive stopper, and that's more of a mindset than anything else. Kleber is athletic enough to be able to pull out. He's had some huge blocks this year. The thing I'm more nervous about is it doesn't matter how big your center, power forward, and small forward are. If your point guard and your shooting guard are tiny, what happens is...
And can't defend.
And can't defend, is that there's mismatches all over. How many times have we seen it this year where JJ's covering let's say a power forward, and
and
then they got switched off. So now Dirk's on a power forward, JJ's on the point guard, and they get switched off from each other. Now it's a mismatch on both ends.
Yeah.
If Dirk does get in his face and then they get over to a power forward,
and normally that would be a mismatch, and that's why you're doing that. You're trying to get them to switch, but JJ is so small.
Yes.
That if Dennis Smith Jr. was there, at least he would be able to slow down whoever that power forward
because he can jump
a little bit. But JJ can't do anything against him.
So our real goal is with this pick, we need to bring Arizona center
DeAndre
Ayton. Yes.
I like Ayton, and I think he would be a great fit for the Mavs if they're going away from Noel, which it does seem like they are going to do. He's not getting the minutes you would expect of a guy who they want to keep around. He got 6 minutes
last night.
No. And the only surprising thing is, to me, if you're wanting to trade Noel, wouldn't you want to give him minutes now so that by the trade deadline, by December 15th,
but see, here's
you have a player who has value?
They don't care.
Does Noel even have value?
No.
That's the problem with Carlisle, is he is terrible at creating value for the trade deadline. He's terrible because he doesn't care about that at all.
Let's be honest. He's terrible at...
Right now, though, this team needs to do that.
He's terrible at developing talent, period, unless it's a necessity. Unless, like a Yogi who has to be thrown in there because we have no other point guards. Then he's good at developing.
But you watch a Sixers team several years ago. You watch a Milwaukee Bucks team several years ago. You watch a Utah. They put guys on the court to create value at the trade deadline.
Well, let's look at Rick Carlisle's background a little bit compared to, let's say, a Jason Kidd. So the Bucks and the Mavericks.
Yeah. They didn't agree when Jason Kidd was here.
So Carlisle came from, and he played for, a Celtics team that was dominant, had a lot of veteran players on it, Larry Bird, all that. They did old school, it was all fundamentals. They didn't develop anybody.
Yeah.
Because after Bird left, that team fell apart.
Yeah.
They didn't develop anybody. The Bucks, on the other hand, Kidd has been on so many teams that he's had to help develop.
Yeah.
He's been on a Nets team that had 2 or 3 young players that he had to develop with them. He's been on a Mavs team that had to develop when he came in. So Jason Kidd is used to developing people. He's been on teams that have had to develop players. Carlisle, when he played, wasn't on any teams that developed anybody. He didn't play too long.
Yeah.
He played on a Celtics team that won a whole bunch of rings.
To me, that shows that he doesn't have the flexibility needed for a young Mavericks team to go forward.
And just break it down for him a little bit. The disagreement between
Jason Kidd and Rick Carlisle had 2 different ways in why Rick Carlisle wanted to be able to call the plays from the sideline and have Jason Kidd run what he wanted to run. And Jason Kidd said, no, I'll listen to what play you give me. But if I see the defense differently, I'm going to make the choice on the court of what we've
Which is the way it should be done.
Yes, it's just like the way Peyton Manning or Tom Brady they make a change at the line. They know, I've got this set of plays, which my coach has given to me, these 4 or 5 plays that I can go to with this lineup on the field.
That makes total sense, because how many times have we seen coming out of a timeout, Rick Carlisle runs a play that's awesome. But then how many times have we gone down the court and a play and we're like, why did they run that? Didn't they see that whatever his name was switched onto whatever his name?
Yeah.
Let's say the point guard was switched onto a power forward, yet the ball gets...
And I think part of the problem is Dennis Smith Jr. He doesn't have that voice to be able to speak up and say, no,
But Dirk does.
Dirk does, but Dirk's not calling the plays. The problem is that the call is coming from the point guard. He calls the play, and they're running whatever Rick Carlisle wants to run, and the defense adjusts, and they're not able to adjust on the fly, and that's a problem this team has since they do not have veteran leadership at the point guard position.
Well, they do have JJ, and they do, but those are all system guys.
And once the second team guys come on the court, their job is just to score as much as possible.
So there's no real plays.
Up and down the field. They're not up and down the court. They're not running.
I have a feeling this is a good discussion for another time, but we've got to end today's show. We will come back tomorrow and preview a little bit of college football rankings, which we will answer on Wednesday. And we'll also dive into more college football results tomorrow. See you next time.
This is Off the Bench.